Hello, the internet! It is Saturday, the 8th of February, 2025, and welcome back to the channel. I own a printer, but I don't really need a printer. Now, I know that's a bit strange, but I'm going to tell you today why you should never buy an Epson printer if you need a printer. Do not do what I did, or do what I did, but don't do what I just recently did. Now, I'll explain that in a second, and I'll explain what's happened. The thing is, I don't really need this printer. I don't have any need to make prints of anything. I haven't needed a printer for a long time. In my day job, I do sometimes require to print out a black and white run sheet. So I went and bought this this is like the cheapest rubbish printer slash scanner. And I feel like for the times that I need it, it covers me well. And I'll tell you, the times that I need it are so slim. I think I might have printed maybe, I don't know. Actually, I can't think of how many times, but anyway, the point of it is I hardly ever use it. I bought it. By the way, the color cartridges have never been changed. I've only ever had to rechange or had to rebuy the black ink cartridge. And that's why you should never buy an Epson printer, because, so what happened, because I never used this thing, I never touch the firmware, right? I keep this on the shelf up the top of my bedroom. I never touch it. I pull it down sporadically and I plug it in and I print, and then I turn it off, put it back there and forget about it. So I've never done anything to the printer at all. By the way, this is a YouTube stream. If you're watching off of YouTube and you want to chat, come on over to the YouTube chat. I'd love to hear your comments. So inadvertently, I plugged this in four days ago to print this run sheet, and it got me. Because on the display, it said firmware update. And before I even knew what I was doing, I was updating the firmware. And I didn't think anything of it, really, except until it then said to me, unidentifiable print cartridges, please reinstall. And I was like, hold on, unidentifiable print cartridge? What's with that? So I always had a spare cartridge laying around, these guys. This is not Epson branded ink. This is a compatible, cheaper off-brand, which is what I've always used. And so I had one laying around, so I was like, oh, okay, maybe the ink's out. It didn't tell me it was out. It just says it's not. It said something like it's not found or something. So I took out the cartridge, put a new one in, turned it back on, and it said, can't use this ink. And I'm like, what? So the firmware update bricked this printer to the point where it'll only use Epson branded ink. So I'm like, are you serious? That's what the firmware update gave? The option to never have an option, to only use Epson branded ink. I was like, okay, so I've got to roll the firmware back. That's never a fun process on any hardware. Most of the time you just do a little search and you got to find a DMG and install it and blah, 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 go through a recovery process. It's not impossible, but it's not something that, I don't know, like every long Jerry, not everyone can do it. Not everybody should have to do it. So the process is a little bit convoluted sometimes. So I started looking for any firmware that was older than the one that I had. And I found, I can't believe I've got to do this, but I found that Epson, how do you say their freaking name? Epson have retroactively removed all old firmware and replaced it with this new one. Now, how do I know that? Because I'm still sitting on Mac OS Monterey. I don't really update my operating system unless it's forced upon me, unless I've bought a new machine. Everything works perfectly. I do all the security updates. I do all the forced updates, but I never update the actual OS until, I buy a new laptop or something extremely rad in those updates is available, which there hasn't been. So I'm sitting on Mac OS Monterey, which is Mac OS 12. So when I went to look for the software, or the firmware, I beg your pardon, there's a bunch of them that are above the ones I need. And those ones, no surprises, are all the current day firmware. And my one, and anything before Mac OS Monterey, has been retroactively changed to this current day's firmware. So if you have any of these Epson printers, any of these XP session, what are they called? This is a 4205 XP, blah, bling, blong, blang. And you were using it before, my advice, and you were using it with unofficial Epson ink, my advice for you would be do not update the firmware. Do not. And so I went and emailed the help desk. Of course I did. I'm not going to let this sit, right? I went and emailed the help desk, and I want to show you guys Epson's response, because this is pretty disappointing. And I want to show you guys Epson's response. This is wait. Why am I hearing myself? Because my stream's playing. Hold on a second. My stream's playing here. I normally mute that crap and don't even play it. Okay, so here we go. So here is the emails. So I said, this is by their silly web portal customer help stuff. I said, hi guys, I need to roll back the firmware on my XP 4205 using the recovery mode firmware for Mac OS Monterey 12.76. However, when searching your website, and I provide a link, I'll show you that in a second, I can only find the current day firmware from the 22nd of January 2025. That's when they did this, by the way. They snuck this in as a New Year's kind of thing, the end of the month of January, and that is version IT040A. I need an older version that does not prevent me from using third-party ink. Yo, Fast Abdul, how you doing, man? I'm here for the tech. You're in the right space. Don't do a firmware update, my friend. I said, I find it infuriating that Epson pushes these updates that block customers from making their own choice of inks. I also noted that Epson have retroactively removed all past firmware options for macOS, replacing them with version IT040A. This effectively forces any Mac user who accepts the update firmware request to only use Epson ink. This is a terrible move from Epson and reflects a company who has lost touch with their customer base. Please link me the firmware and provide the option on your website for others for others to use should they choose. That's badly worded. I think I was a little pissed off. Yo, Brett over on Kick, how you doing, man? I'm on YouTube right now, Brett. Come on over to the tubes, but good to see you, Brett. And so then they responded. Get this response. Dear Benon, thank you for contacting Epson support. Please be advised of the usage condition statement from the Epson website. And they link to it. Usage conditions, and he's circled it. It says, this printer is designed to function only with genuine Epson ink cartridges and not third-party ink cartridges. The printer may not function properly or at all if you use a third-party ink cartridge. Now, the thing is, even though that's in there, when I bought this printer years ago, it worked with any ink. So yes, they might have snuck that into the terms and services, and who reads them all? That could have been in there, but it was working until they decided it's not going to. So this is kind of like, it's the same as like imagine a vehicle manufacturer. Imagine Mitsubishi said you can only use Mitsubishi fuel. You want to go to any service station, gas station, and fill up? No, you can't. You have to come to the Mitsubishi service station and fill up there. Be like, what are you talking about? Like, that doesn't seem legal, right? It's a device. A printer is a device that requires ink. How can they say you have to use our ink? It's baffling. And I was very upset to hear that response. So I responded, hi Christian, regardless of the highlighted condition you indicated, the printer was working fine with any cartridge before you issued the firmware update. Not providing a rollback option to earlier firmware and updating all existing links online to only include the current firmware, I'll show you that, is a sleuth move from a money-hungry global sham company. I repeat my initial request, please provide a rollback to prior firmware. Cheers, Benon. Now, what am I talking about, that the updated firmware? Let's check this link. Let's check this. This goes to their website. This is the printer. Is that as large as it goes? Okay, so that's pretty good. This is the XP4205, the exact model I have. You scroll down here and you see that it's Mac OS 12, which is the Monterey, which is I'm currently using. And it always opens up this recommended for you, but you don't actually need that because we're looking for firmware. So if you open this up, you'll see here the recovery mode firmware version IT040A and the date, 22nd of January 2025. That is the firmware that they snuck in, and I stupidly hit OK because, of course, you need to use this web portal to roll it back. But on the front of your Epson is where it gives you the option to update firmware. And in my drunken stupor, it actually was morning time and I did it. I wasn't drunk. I stupidly said new firmware, OK, and I went through and did it. So when you go to this website, you would assume that in here there'd be options for any. Can't hear you, Mind of Tron? Can't hear me? Mind of Tron on DLive can't hear me? I don't know what, when someone says that in the chat, wait. Why am I hearing myself? It's not me, dude. It's you, dude. Okay, thanks for jumping in with that. If you can't hear me, then I can't help you. I don't know why you can't hear me, but anyway, so yeah, so what you'd assume here is when you come in to get the firmware, there'd be options for old firmware. Now that's just on Mac OS 12. I told you I'm on an older version of Mac. Let's go forward to today's operating system. If you were on what is it, Sonoma or whatever, Mac OS 15, you got to click the go button as well. Scroll down. Here is the firmware. You open that up. What do you know? It's the exact same firmware from the 22nd of January. FWC65TL_IT040A. That's the most current. Then if you happen to be on a Mac OS something between what I'm on, 12, let's just pick one. Let's just go 14. Click go. You go down here to firmware, click on open. And how do you see it again? The exact same one, 22nd of January, FWCK65TL_IT040A. Now, if you want to go back in time past where I am, I mean, check out Mac OS 10.15. If you happen to be that far back, then you might need that firmware if you stupidly hit OK. Go down here to firmware, and there it is. They've retroactively updated every single firmware back in time to be this one here, the one that cancels the option to use any ink you like. I reckon that is a disgustingly sleuthful move. It's so bad. Like Epson, so bad. Now, I did respond to that effect. I told you, I said that's a sleuth move. So yeah, I said, hi, Christian, regardless of the highlighted condition, you indicated the printer was working fine with any cartridge before you issued the firmware. Not providing a rollback option to earlier firmware and updating all existing links online to only include the current firmware is a sleuth move from a money-hungry global sham company. I repeat my initial request, please provide a rollback to a prior firmware. Christian responds, Dear Benon, thank you for contacting Epson support. We are sorry, but there is no rollback option on the firmware update. If you require further assistance or if the issue is not resolved by this process, of course it is not resolved, but Epson are standing firm that they are now, as of the 22nd of January, they're saying, if you've got an Epson printer, sucked in, you have to buy our ink. Unless, of course, you say no to the firmware update. I'd encourage everyone to not update their firmware. A firmware update for a printer? I mean, let's be honest. What do? They print. As long as it's printing, as long as it works, what on earth could a firmware update even provide you? As long as you've got a lockdown Wi-Fi network and you're not, you've got a password and blah blah blah. I cannot imagine what a update to the firmware would give you. And to that effect, I cannot imagine why I said yes to updating it. It was a momentary slip. I'll be honest, I hate printers. I can't stand them. Like I said, I don't need one. I only need it very, very seldom. So when I have to pull it off the shelf and plug it all in and do this crap, I'm like, fuck, just hurry up. And I think I was like, come on, I'll update the firmware. Okay, press it. And then I was like, oh, why have I done that? So my response back to old mate here was, hi, Christian. I'll take this as an official statement on the matter from Epson. I'm making a YouTube video concerning this matter. That's the one we're on right now, a live stream. So if there's anything else you would like to add, please do so before the 10th of February when my video will go public. Now, I gave that date because I knew I'd be live on the 8th. And then there's always a couple of days where YouTube does their thing where they demonetize and then remonetize. So if this stream, after it's finished, if it goes offline, it'll come back on by the 10th. That's why I gave them 2 days. And then I got a response. They rang me. Dear Benon, thank you for contacting Epson. We tried to call you back. I've never rung them, but they say they tried to call me back. By the way, I only put my phone number in there because it would not let me progress on the form without including a phone number. But my method of contact is clearly email. And I got to tell you, I don't answer phone calls. If someone calls me on my phone and the name doesn't come up, that it's in my contacts, I do not answer. That's because spammers and scammers, they pick numbers at random. And when they verify that it's a real number, they then sell that number as a real number to these marketing agencies and they pay top dollar. So the moment you answer a phone call from someone who's not in your address book, you'll often, if you're stupid enough to do it, which I have done, so I am stupid, I have done it, you hear this little pause and then it hangs up. And that is verifying that, oh, we got a real number, cool. And then that goes into a database and they sell it. So when they rang me, I do not answer it, right? It didn't come up as Epson, it just came up with a random number and I'm okay, whatever. They then send me a voice message saying, hi, Benon, this is Angela from Epson, returning your call. I never rang them, so I don't know why she's returning my call, but I never responded on the phone. That's what I'm saying. So they say they tried to call me back, but I'm not available. So then she says, please attach the picture of the serial number of the printer. This is the way she's talking as if we've had like this long, in-depth conversation about it. We haven't. This is the first that this person's jumped in, Mar. I was dealing with Christian before. Who's this Mar person? Please attach a picture of the serial number of the printer. We will escalate this concern to our higher level support if you require further assistance or if the issue is not resolved. So I did. I responded with the picture of the serial number, but to be completely frank, or to be completely upfront, they've already answered clearly enough here. He says, we are sorry, but there is no rollback option on the firmware. So what's the point of going on any further? If there is no rollback option, which there clearly isn't because they've removed them from the internet, they've scrubbed them. And I checked the Wayback Machine as well. I could not find, okay, so there are websites that proclaim to have old firmware, but shit me. If you go to a website called epsoninc.com and then you have to install a DNG or an exe file, I just telling you this, for a printer, you're willing to risk installing malware on your machine by running an exe. There's no way I'd run anything as long as it was from the official Epson scam website, right? I know that sounds strange, sounds a bit strange, but don't go searching, don't go looking. I looked on BitTorrent, I looked in these places. I got to places where they say they've got them and I was like, oh, not touching that, not touching it. So if there is no rollback option, which is what Christian at customer service is saying, then there is no rollback option. So I don't know what providing my serial number, which I did do, provided here if it makes it any better. It's right there as well on the bottom. You can get a screenshot of that. I don't know if that helps anybody, but I don't care, by the way. Like I said, at this stage, printers, they're useless to me. By the way, it has got a scanner. Yeah, a scanner's pretty handy. Scan in old photos and stuff. So that's where that situation does end, as far as I'm concerned. I gave them the option to do the right thing, provide a rollback for the firmware, not just for me, provide a rollback for any customer. It should be on their website, which we looked at that, right? When you click on this software support portal, to update firmware, and you go down to your operating system, you choose wherever it is. You can use your Windows, you can do all your things. I didn't check all those ones because they're irrelevant to me, but if you're on Mac OS 12 like I am, and you scroll down to firmware, you click that, there should be multiple options here for different firmwares. Instead, they've changed it in January, and that's the only one, FWCK65TL_IT04OA. I think that's a woeful move from Epson, and I tell you, if this did not have a scanner, I would be outside like in Office Space, and I'd be smashing this to that Beastie Boys song Sabotage, right? That's what they did it to, I think. Is that right? I think it's Sabotage. So at this stage, I told them I'd make a video, put this online as a warning. My advice or my tip to anybody, just do not update your firmware. If you've got a printer that's working from Epson, not just these models, the XP Expression ones, not just any of them, for the love of yourself, do not update the firmware. Just decline it. Decline. Every time it comes up, I don't know if you use your printer a lot, but if you do, you got to keep decline. Just say no. Don't do it. Don't do it. Otherwise, you'll be stuck in this position I'm in because their printer ink is expensive. That's the point. Genuine Epson ink is expensive. It's the same thing as any other ink, but yet there it is. They make you use it. What a load of shit. Hey, John, besides Epson, there are 3 other brands that make printers, Brother, Canon, and HP. Are those 3 as I found out on Best Buy's website? Okay, cool. So yeah, there are other brands out there is what we're hearing. Of course there are. I don't know what their positions are with non-genuine ink is. I now know what Epson's position is, and they're very, very clear. Thank you, Christian. Very clear about their position. I think it sucks. I think it's terrible. Terrible move. So yeah, my advice, don't update your firmware, and Epson, as far as I'm concerned, unless you respond to my email with the previous firmware, we're done here. And thanks very much for a lousy customer experience with your customer service team. And your printer is what a printer should be. It prints. It's not bad. Hey, see you next time. Get out of here.